So that's a good video for us. That's kind of the premise of how do we become kind of extend ourselves a little bit out of like what Milwaukee's team is and what the state's team is and how we really expand. And this is a great group to kind of talk about and kind of understand the fact that we have public financing at 50% of this arena, and this is really like an infusion and a catalyst for business development in the city of Milwaukee during this time period is just miraculous. It's really kind of one of the bigger achievements of the year, and very challenging to kind of get through. And I kind of every time I kind of think about it, I think the tough part is over, but tough part's never over as we continue to kind of try to get a shovel in the ground in April to get this done. I can tell you, I kind of grew up in New York City. I spent a lot of time in much larger companies. I spent some time at Madison Square Garden and ran marketing for the Knicks and sales for the Knicks, and kind of did some varied jobs at Six Flags theme parks, as well as Deluxe, always in the service business, always customer-centric, always selling kind of the service. And this is an interesting climate because what I've really had to kind of push through and bring a team is we had a real opportunity to rip the business of the Bucks back down to the studs and really create a startup company. And that's what we are. We are 1 year into a startup company. We basically created process, organization, a performance culture that basically relies upon generating revenue. We are unapologetic about being aggressive and direct selling. And that sounds funny, but that's like a real issue you have to overcome in Wisconsin. Everybody is so nice, everybody's so great, and it's almost like a threat or something wrong when you're actually selling directly, products in an aggressive way. So we've had to do a lot of coaching, and we've had to do a lot of culture change and a lot of behavior change, like internally before we change it externally. And people kind of ask, like, where are ticket sales, where are sponsorship sales? I mean, one of the sources of pride is really kind of the behavior. What it really takes is time in a startup and really creating the behavior of a very service-oriented organization that is really about driving revenue and being unapologetic about driving revenue. And I'd say we're kind of in midpoint of it. We're kind of way ahead of schedule, but we're still at a point where we need to train people. The business of sports is really simple. The truth is it should be about 70-80% business to business and 20% individuals kind of buying tickets and hospitality. We were at the other. We were totally flipped around where we had no business, business to business. So to build that infrastructure and to kind of that core base really took some time to get it going. And now it's starting to go. I mean, we've got a product, we've got a value proposition that we're selling. We're improving the experience at the Bradley Center. We are investing money in the product. We have a game plan and a vision to actually win an NBA championship. And I think what's really important, for business in general is not to be the best business in the NBA, not to be the best business in Milwaukee, not to be the best business in Wisconsin, but to be one of the best businesses in the world and kind of set that stage to get it. And that sounds kind of hyperbole, but the funny thing is, I think we have like a low sense of self-esteem in Milwaukee a little bit. I think it's like really interesting. I went to business school in Chicago. I spent a summer in Gurnee working for Six Flags. I didn't really spend time in Milwaukee. The time I did, of course, I got drunk at Summerfest and had an unbelievable time. I went to a couple concerts. I had great meals. Love the city. But for some reason, like, we have this kind of like quiet undertone feeling that we can't compete, as a world-class city and world-class. And I just think it's insane. It's just literally insane. And as business leaders, as political leaders, I'm starting to spend a lot of time with tourism and Visit Milwaukee, like how we not brand ourselves and how we not market ourselves as like one of the premier destinations like in the country is just counterintuitive to how do we grow this environment and how do we grow the city's economic development. I really think as leaders we almost have to be as aggressive in positioning the state and its biggest city. One of the biggest fights I kind of had at the state is how can you not invest in the state's biggest city to have the state flourish? Because if you look at any model in any state in the country, the largest cities have to be flourishing for the state to do well in employment, in tax revenue, in every kind of indicator that grows a city. So we are in a very small, we're a small business. You know, the Bucks are about $150 million business. With development, with everything else, we might become, you know, a $400 million business with not an incredible EBITDA bottom line of business. And you can tell by people who run arenas and people who run teams, they can tell the economics aren't great. We have unbelievable opportunity on leveraging like the ancillary development and outside development. Our real growth will be what we do with our media rights on a local level, what we do and how we develop the ancillary development around the city. Our growth and our revenue will not be a point of wealth for us running an arena and running the team. I can just tell you it's that difficult in a small market. There's so many events you can have, and there's a price sensitivity in this market. There is an inflection point of which you cannot charge people in Milwaukee and people in Wisconsin a ticket price. So we will always be kind of in that small to mid-range ticket price, and yet we're in an arms war kind of in professional sports. So our expenses always kind of compete with the larger markets, but our revenues have a hard time getting there, if that makes sense, to where it is. We are literally, you know, investing the same amount of money New York and LA are in medical, in practice facility, in coaching, in players, but yet our revenue expectations are kind of capped at, you know, where we can go on sponsorship and ticket sales, and that's a great springboard for us. Is we basically took an opportunity where we didn't aggressively sell. We have a 3-year runway where we're positioning a new arena, and we are re-exploring and redefining the way we're selling sponsorship. We'll announce once we get a lease signed with the Wisconsin Center District that we already have 1, 2, or 3 founding partners for the new arena. These aren't naming partners, these are founding partners, but to the level of which the spend is equal, if not greater than some of the larger market founding rights. And a big part of that is creativity, really leveraging kind of the entire development district and forging relationships that really are win-wins. And knock on wood, 2 of those companies are very grounded in Wisconsin, which is a great story to tell. I think we've learned very, very quickly that this is not a bullshit city and a bullshit state. Like, we set expectations very low and we overwhelm them to do this. This is not a city where we are going to overpromise and underdeliver because we have no equity. You know, I am an outsider. I have learned that. I get it. I could be here, 10 years and I'd still be a newbie, in the world of politics and the world of business. And the only thing I can do is really build trust and equity with people and over-deliver. And people kind of say, hey, we've done relatively well. We're not going to make a mistake on that. I can tell you we are very consistent and very disciplined on our relationships, on our promises and our partnerships, not to screw that up because we don't have a second chance. We've got too many kind of people, too many on the political side, too many on the economic side that somehow don't root for everybody to win, which happens everywhere. But it seems here people are a little more deep-seated than you'd like them to be. I think there's an unbelievable culture of like real business and real leaders that people don't even understand in Milwaukee and how strong it is. We've got 5, 6 Fortune 200 companies like in Wisconsin. We've got unbelievable growth. We've got on tap. We've got unbelievable leadership. A big focus of ours and some of our owners is how do we start centralizing that? How do we start working together kind of in the private and public sector to kind of move business development? Our owners have a vision to win an NBA championship, but I can tell you they wouldn't invest a few $100 million into the city unless they really saw the promise of multiples in return to kind of build this infrastructure in this downtown. And then we get to day to day. I'll tell you we show our stats, which are phenomenal, but it's zero-based budgeting. I mean, we're hockey stick growth, but we came from nothing. I mean, literally, for better or worse, the Bucks' focus was not about reinvestment into the company, into the brand, into the people. The objectives were not to make it one of the more successful NBA teams off the court and on the court. So when we acquired this team, we had the unbelievable opportunity to literally go from literally last, and not last by percentage points, like out of 53 out of the 55 metrically driven grades in the NBA, we were last or second to last in all those, from ticket prices to number of partners to experience to food quality to, you name it, we were the last. So our growth, in the next 2 to 3 years should be exponential, should be a great opportunity to get it done. And by the way, we're going to continue to change the experience in the current Bradley Center, as crazy as that sounds, to be exponentially better as well. And that's strategic. We actually have to get people accustomed to a better experience and a better hospitality quotient before they're ready to pay higher prices in a new arena. And there will be higher prices in a new arena. I know everybody talks about prices, and we're doing a hell of a lot of focus groups, and it is one of the rare markets that some of the high net worth individuals in great percentages still use coupons in the marketplace. People look at their bills. People check their balances on daily and weekly levels. I know that sounds normal, but that's like when you look at qualitative and quantitative research, that's not normal, with people of means. But we're learning. We are really learning. I think what's really interesting culturally is one of the things we've kind of instilled is we are going 1,000 miles an hour, and we certainly have the right thoughts ahead. And what I've had a really hard time internally with in kind of the culture and business is telling people it's okay to make mistakes. Like, we are going to screw up, and make kind of mistakes. And the real key is how do we pivot and how do we correct those mistakes on every level. And it's interesting, like, culturally, like, people have a very hard time with that, on the kind of instilling like a real entrepreneurial spirit and how do we change that. But it's people, everybody internally is kind of turning around. We also have a kind of environment and culture where I have a hell of a lot of fun, and everybody around can realize that they can work their butts off and have a really fun time. And having a fun time and being successful also means kind of driving revenue, driving EBITDA, and hitting our marks. So we actually have business objectives associated with us having fun. And I know that all sounds simple, but it's very different from the culture we kind of inherited to get it done. The greatest metric in the history of the world are 6 of our guys own homes in Milwaukee. So you say, like, what does that mean? Well, I'll tell you, like, that number's only been 1 or 2 in the past. And for people to love this city and want to put roots down and want to put an investment in and move their families. Now, a lot of these guys are bringing their mother and father in, or their brother because they're young guys, but they are buying homes and they're committed to staying here. That culturally is a big difference as we're building a team, which is very, very cool. Very, very cool for all of us. On the business side, we've had exponential growth. It really has to do, like, again, the biggest metric we really care about are season tickets. Season tickets is the health of a professional organization. We inherited about 3,500 season ticket holders when we took over the team. We kind of started this season with about 7,000. It would be the hope to get to about 10,000. When you get to around 12,000, you have a healthy base. And that basically means we currently have a 19,000 person arena. The more you have a full season equivalence, the less you've got to off-sell 7,000 individual tickets a game or group sales a game to kind of get to that revenue point. So we're growing. We're doing okay, and we could do a lot better. And what we really want to do is get this in shape so when team performance starts to really kind of pick up, we are prepared and ready. And we also want to get in shape for a transition to a new arena in 24 months, which will be exciting. We got general plan. We received general plan approval for development yesterday by a full vote of the Common Council. We owe the Common Council a detailed plan on March 1st, which will go to the zoning committee. For the month of March, we'll spend in City Hall holding hands and kind of getting approval for the detailed plan. for the end of March, with the hope of breaking ground in the middle of April. So if you look in the news and everything, we're talking June. I mean, the real hope is get everything on schedule and get a shovel on the ground in April would put us on schedule to actually have 2 or 3 months where we can screw up some of the construction time-wise and still be done on time, which would be great. We will, in the first phase, break ground on a training facility, commercial space, a parking structure, a public plaza, a live block, which is basically 50, 60,000 square feet of retail outside the arena, and the arena proper. That's a lot of construction. That's a lot of construction to begin with. So this is all, we're now deep into the logistics of how do we figure out parking now? How do we figure out how to maintain the Bradley Center on an event basis? Like, while this is all happening, this arena is being built 50 feet north of the current Bradley Center, just to put things in perspective. And although there's a lot of land out there, it's actually on a pretty small footprint to get this done. And the vision here is, how do we create a neighborhood where people live and work and have fun? And a part of that is you'll see us very aggressively announcing and getting commitments from commercial leasers, like right away, to get that in, and as quickly as we can, kind of figuring out the residential pieces to get people living there as quickly as we can. And we'll be very aggressive on that. And there's been great interest. I mean, unbelievable interest. We just don't have our ducks in a row at the moment to kind of embrace them and cut deals and get this done. And a big piece of that is we are in the final stages of finalizing a lease with the Wisconsin Center District. So in simple terms, the Wisconsin Center District will own the arena. We'll have a master lease, which will give us operating and maintenance rights for a 30-year term, and we will manage and own and book the arena, the live block, the plaza, and we'll share the parking structure with the city, but we'll manage the parking structure. The practice facility is a completely private development, which we'll probably break ground on before we break ground on the arena. You know, I would think sometime in March to get done, and we'll start showing pictures of that probably in the next 30, 40 days, which is pretty exciting and great, and, you know, fun for the city because it spins off some tax revenue to get done.